Hi, everybody. It's John Thompson. Today we're going to be talking about some very famous railroad spots in America where we can see some steam locomotives. We're going to start off here with the Union Pacific shops in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this is a very unique place in the country because this is the only main Class 1 railroad that actually runs steam. They run about 4 locomotives. As you can see, the Roundhouse facility was a lot bigger during the era of steam, but as a result of modernization, stalls were eliminated from the Roundhouse and it was reduced down to 8, as was the machine shop. The machine shop was basically reduced in size by half. The machine shop is where they carry out the maintenance on the locomotives, as well as storing them in the roundhouse. Recently, the Union Pacific completed the restoration of Big Boy number 4014, and she saw service for the first time in 60 years for the commemoration of the Golden Spike. So I'm going to move on now to another railroad. We're going to go to Steamtown National Historic Site. Steamtown National Historic Site is located in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and the yard was actually originally part of the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. It later became part of the Erie-Lackawanna in 1960 when the Erie and the Lackawanna merged, and was abandoned in the 1980s when Conrail shut the shops down here. The site basically in 1989 was in very poor shape. There were a lot of weeds. Track was basically rotten. They had to do a lot of major work to get the site to what it is today, especially around the area where the roundhouse is. Most of the roundhouse was gone that you see today. Very little of it remained, and the turntable was just a big concrete pit in 1989. The machine shop behind the roundhouse is where they do all the restoration work on their locomotives. They're currently restoring a steam locomotive to service, and they're looking to have that done in a couple of years. Now, they are contracting some of their restoration work out to other railroads, and this next one we're going to visit is where some of that restoration work is occurring. We're going actually now to Amish country, and we're going to visit the Strasburg Railroad. Now, the Strasburg Railroad has about 3 miles of track, and basically they do excursions every day, and they run several trains, as a matter of fact. And I can get you a good bird's eye view of the build of the complex here. You have basically an engine house, and you have shops. And some of the restoration projects that they do are fabricating fireboxes, among which one of them is for the 3713 being restored at Steamtown National Historic Site. This is basically one of the premier restoration shops in the Northeast for locomotives. Across the street, you're going to see a big white building. That is the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. They have a lot of equipment in there that has been restored by the Strasburg Railroad crew and is on display. You can actually go visit it, and as well as their turntable, which the Strasburg uses to turn their locomotives for their trips. And now the next place we are going to visit is the New Hope and Ivyland Railroad. The New Hope and Ivyland Railroad is a remnant of the former Reading Railroad, and it was mainly a branch line of there. It runs into Philadelphia. The modern line actually is continuing into where the SEPTA yards are in Philadelphia. It also hauls passenger trains on the weekends. They do a lot of excursions. It's not really much of a museum to look at when you go there, but the community has a lot of art shops, and it's a lot of artists and antiques, and it's a great family place to spend the day, so I would recommend that. The next place we're going to go to is the Railroaders Memorial Museum in Altoona, Pennsylvania. The Railroaders Memorial Museum itself, the actual building, the main building was actually the mechanic shop, and that's basically master mechanics would go. You'd go there to see the master mechanic, and the master mechanics would go there. That's where their offices were. The other buildings behind, there's a long building behind the main building, and that is it was the old tank shop, which is now basically sold to another company. The roundhouse is not original to the site, however. That was actually a more modern addition. They have a steam locomotive in the collection they're trying to restore called the K4. It is basically they're trying to work out a deal with Norfolk Southern so they can run trains around the Horseshoe Curve. In addition to which, they have some passenger equipment and other locomotives stored in that roundhouse. Finally, the last place we're going to go on this tour is the world famous Horseshoe Curve. This is one of the best spots in the country to be watching trains if you're a train fan. Originally, it was built with 4 tracks, and its purpose was to basically shorten the distance to go through the mountains, the Allegheny Front. What was happening was it was decided that tunneling would be impossible. You would have to have a very long tunnel, so the solution was to go around the mountains to basically expand the railroad west. At its prime, the Pennsylvania Railroad had about 26,000 miles of track. You can actually take a tramway from the lower parking lot by the reservoir all the way up to the top, and there's an actual spot where you can go and watch trains. A lot of trains go by basically every 5 or 10 minutes on all the tracks in all directions. You see a lot of freight, and you also see some passenger equipment as well. So thank you very much for your time.